Hello, welcome back to LM Teaches English. This is lesson 2 for The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Simon Stevens, which is the play version, adapted from the novel by Mark Haddon. So in the previous lesson we got up to page 6 and Christopher had just been arrested for assaulting a police officer because the police officer tried to touch him. So we learnt a few things in that short space of time. We learnt a few things about Christopher that hopefully you had a little look at, sort of comparing in what ways he's like a typical teenager, in what ways he's not like a typical teenager. And some of the conclusions you might have come to are that he is indeed not neurotypical, and you might have recognised some of his character traits as being on the spectrum, slightly on the autistic spectrum. So for example, he takes things very literally, so when Mrs. Shears says to him, "Get away from my dog," Christopher takes 2 steps away from the dog, so he takes things very literally. He also is struggling to deal with the death of the dog and Mrs. Shears shouting and swearing at him. It just says here, he doesn't talk for a long time in fact, it just says here, he puts his hands over his ears, he closes his eyes, he rolls forward, he presses his forehead onto the grass, he starts groaning, and he groans a lot. And then finally, the final kind of clue that Christopher is not neurotypical is when the policeman goes to sort of pick up Christopher by the arm, which, you know, wouldn't be pleasant, but it wouldn't be aggressive perhaps. If you were speaking with a police officer and you weren't cooperating, you might expect it, but for Christopher this is completely unacceptable. He does not like to be touched, so he lashes out and hits the policeman, and that is how he ends up being arrested. Also in part 1 we had Siobhan. We learned about the character Siobhan, and we learned that she is a very important character to Christopher because she's his teacher, but also because she is reading the book, Christopher's book, so she is the narrator of this play. But she's kind of combines those 2 roles, and a really good way to demonstrate that is when she says, she's reading from the book and she's describing the police officer having a big orange leaf stuck to the bottom of his shoe, but then she says, "This is good, Christopher, it's quite exciting, I like the details, they make it more realistic." So she's coming out of her narration role in order to act as Christopher's teacher and to say, "Oh, I like this." So we mentioned in the last video that was breaking the 4th wall, a term that you drama students and maybe even media students will be familiar with, and it just simply means when the actors on the stage acknowledge that they are in a play or that this is not real. So that 4th wall is broken. If we imagine that 4th wall being the wall between the audience and the actors on the stage, and it's broken down because we're all aware of each other. So more on that, don't worry if you haven't understood it fully, there'll be more on that as we go along and it should become clearer. So then, what we're going to do, like we did in the last lesson, I'm going to read a few pages to you and then I'm going to leave you with a task to do leading up to the next video. And, well, that's it really. Let's get started, okay? So, we're on page 6 for those of you using this version of the book. Okay, Siobhan begins us as a narrator. I find people confusing. This is for 2 main reasons. The first main reason is that people do a lot of talking without using any words. Siobhan says that if you raise one eyebrow, it can mean lots of different things. It can mean, "I want to do sex with you." I never said that. Yes, you did. I didn't use those words, Christopher. You did on the 12th of September last year at first break. And it can also mean, "I think that what you just said was very stupid." Can you take your laces out of your shoes, please, Christopher? Christopher does. Thank you. Could you empty your pockets onto the desk, please? Is that in case I have anything in them that I could use to kill myself or escape or attack a policeman with? The duty sergeant looks at him for a beat. That's right. I've got a Swiss Army knife, but I only use that for doing odd jobs, not for stabbing things or hurting people. Surely good. Christopher empties his pockets. A piece of string, a piece of a wooden puzzle, 3 pellets of rat food for Toby, my pet rat. £1.47. This was made up of a £1 coin, a 20p coin, 2 10p coins, a 5p coin, and a 2p coin. A red paperclip, a key for the front door, a Swiss Army knife with 13 attachments including a wire stripper and a saw and a toothpick and tweezers. Could you take your watch off, please, Christopher? No. I'm sorry, Christopher. I need my watch to know exactly what time it is. Take your watch off, please, Christopher. Christopher, please will you take your watch off? I'm asking you for a final time. Give it here, lad. The duty sergeant tries to take the watch. Christopher starts screaming. The duty sergeant stops. He moves away. He nods his head. Christopher stops screaming. It's all right, son. You keep it. Christopher calms down. Do you have any family, Christopher? Yes, I do. And who is your family? Father and mother, but mother's dead, and also Uncle Terry, who is in Sunderland. He is my father's brother, and my grandparents too, but 3 of them are dead, and Grandma Burton is at a home because she has senile dementia, and she thinks I'm someone on television. Right. Lovely. Do you know your father's telephone number, Christopher? Christopher turns to Ed. Ed looks at him. He holds his hand out in front of him with his fingers stretched. Christopher does the same. They touch fingers, then let go. I could see the Milky Way as we drove towards the town centre. Could you? Some people think the Milky Way is a long line of stars, but it isn't. Our galaxy is a huge disk of stars of millions of light years across, and the solar system is somewhere near the outer edge of the disk. Is that right? For a long time, scientists were puzzled by the fact that the sky is dark at night, even though there are billions of stars in the universe, and there must be stars in every direction you look, so that the sky should be full of starlight, because there is very little in the way to stop the light reaching the Earth. Ed stares at him, says nothing. Then they worked out that the universe was expanding, that the stars were all rushing away from one another after the Big Bang, and the further these stars were away from us, the faster they were moving, some of them nearly as fast as the speed of light, which is why their light never reached us. Terrific. Christopher, Mr. Boone, could you come this way, please? Are you going to interview me and record the interview? I don't think there'll be any need for that. I've spoken to your father and he says you didn't mean to hit the policeman. Did you mean to hit the policeman? Yes. But you didn't mean to hurt the policeman? No, I didn't mean to hurt the policeman. I just wanted him to stop touching me. You know that it's wrong to hit a policeman, don't you? I do. Did you kill the dog, Christopher? I didn't kill the dog. Do you know that it is wrong to lie to a policeman and you can get into a very great deal of trouble if you do? Yes. Do you know who killed the dog? Do you know who killed the dog? No. Are you telling the truth? Yes, I always tell the truth. Right. I'm going to give you a caution. Is that going to be on a piece of paper like a certificate I can keep? No, a caution means that we are going to keep a record of what you did, that you hit a policeman, but that it was an accident and that you didn't mean to hurt the policeman. But it wasn't an accident. Christopher, please. If you get into any more trouble, we will take out this record and see that you have been given a caution, and we will take things much more seriously. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. The second main reason is that people often talk using metaphors. These are examples of metaphors. I'm going to seriously lose my rag. He was the apple of her eye. They had a skeleton in the cupboard. We had a real pig of the day. The dog was stone dead. The word metaphor means carrying something from one place to another, and it is when you describe something by using a word for something that it isn't. This means that the word metaphor is a metaphor. Wow, that's clever. It's true. Yes. I think it should be called a lie because a pig is not like a day and people do not have skeletons in their cupboards. And when I try to make a picture of the phrase in my head, it just confuses me because imagining an apple in someone's eye doesn't have anything to do with liking someone a lot. And it makes you forget what the person was talking about. Okay, we're going to leave it there for today because we've got plenty to be looking at. The most I think noticeable part of this book is probably Christopher and how different he is from what we'd expect, how we'd expect a neurotypical person to deal with this situation. So the task for this week for this session is to have a little look into ASD, so autistic spectrum disorder, and have a look what it means to have Asperger's, autism, what are the characteristics of somebody who has that, who is on the spectrum. And then I would like you to compare that to Christopher to see how his characteristics, some of these traits are very similar. So some of you will probably be able to do that off the top of your head because you might well know somebody already who is autistic. For example, we've got the fact that he is very literal and he doesn't like metaphors. He likes people to say what they mean. So that would probably come under one of those character traits. Something else that's interesting in this section is that we meet another policeman, this time it's a duty sergeant, and he deals with Christopher in a very, very different way. We'll come back to this. I just want to draw your attention to it today, but I don't need to do anything with it just yet, just to bear it in mind. First of all, we have the policeman, and the way that he deals with Christopher is he loses patience very quickly, and he actually grabs Christopher, which, you know, we know it's wrong for Christopher to have hit the policeman, but at the same time it was probably wrong of the policeman to have grabbed a young boy, especially when it's quite clear that this young boy has learning difficulties. So there's that policeman, and then we have here this duty sergeant who actually deals with Christopher in a much better way. When Christopher refuses to hand over his watch, the policeman says, "It's all right, son, you keep it." He also then talks to Christopher about the caution in a much clearer way and an easier way for Christopher to understand. So no kind of metaphors, none of that. It's just very straightforward so Christopher can access it. So far we've had the policeman and duty sergeant who are both law enforcement. We're going to meet, this is a slight spoiler I suppose, but we're going to meet some more law enforcement as the play goes on, and we'll have a look at that once we've met them all and compare them, but just bear it in mind for now. The other thing is we've seen Siobhan some more in her role as a narrator and as a teacher. When she says, "Wow, that's clever," and she's reading Christopher's book and how he describes that a metaphor, the word metaphor is actually a metaphor, and she breaks out of the role of narrator in order to speak to Christopher, who we assume in this, from the way it's being read, that he's sort of sitting in front of her, or they're in the room together as she reads his book out, because she's giving him immediate feedback. So it's like they're in their classroom, they're having a lesson. We've also met Christopher's father, Ed. Ed, he's referred to in the margins here. So Ed is Christopher's father. We also learned a little bit about Christopher's family when he took the policeman's question very seriously, and he said father and mother, but mother's dead. So we know that Ed is a single parent, is the only parent of Christopher. We also get the vibe that Ed is tired. Obviously he's been brought to a police station to collect his son, and all Christopher's doing is talking about the Milky Way, which is fascinating, and another shows us something else about Christopher's personality. But with Ed's responses, you can see just from the graphology, which means just the look on the page, Ed's utterances are much shorter than Christopher's. So is that right? Ed stares at him, says nothing. Terrific. So we know that Ed is used to Christopher and he's used to him talking on, and then it's best for him just to, I don't know, make one-word utterances, or maybe he's heard all of this before and he's just humouring Christopher. It'd be interesting for you to think, I suppose, if you were in that position and your parents had to pick you up from the police station, how they would react, and then compare that to how Ed is reacting, just to give you an idea of what their relationship is like and what their home life might be like. So we're going to come on to Ed a little bit more in the following lessons, so just bear Ed in mind for now, don't do necessarily any work on him. So for today's activity, the main thing I would like you to do is to look at ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, and look at how Christopher's personality traits or crossover, how they match up. And then that will help you as well as we're going through the rest of the play to understand Christopher's motivations and why he does the things he does. So we've got up to page 10. We'll begin from page 11 next time, and I'll see you then. Bye.